Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. I'm your host, as always, Alan Seals, and our episode today is with Trent Saunders, T. Oliver Reid, and Eddie Noel Rodríguez, three people who play Hermes, two in the Broadway production, one in the national tour. This is the first time we've ever had an episode like this where we've had three different people playing the same role. I think we coined the term Hermesian. Hermesi? I don't know. We we figured that out. They are three uniquely different guys, all playing the same role across Broadway and national tour. As I mentioned, they bring their own unique flavor to the role, and this speaks back to the creative team. We've actually heard this more than once now, that the characters that they bring to stage are actually part of who they are in real life. They're encouraged to make the character, to bring themselves into the character, to make the character that much more unique. And also, side note, T was in the middle of trying to figure out if Trent was going to have to go on for Orpheus tonight, as I'm recording this. So we get to hear a bit of the amazing life of swings and understudies unfold in real time. So if you hear T sort of talking about checking with the stage manager and having to get up for a second and coming back, he's going to talk with the production team to figure out who's playing what tonight in the production. So that's lots of fun. Find me online on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening now. And after a short break, here's the episode with Trent Saunders, T. Oliver Reid, and Eddie Rodríguez.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
We have not one, not two, but three guests with us today as we continue our amazing journey way down underground. From the national tour of Hadestown, we have Eddie Rodríguez, who has been performing professionally since the age of 14 and was Emilio in the national tour of On Your Feet. From the Broadway cast, we have T. Oliver Reid, who's now with the addition of, who now with the addition of Hadestown is at his 13th Broadway credit. Also from the Broadway cast is Trent Saunders, who also has a whole slew of amazing Broadway credits, including Evita, the original Broadway cast of Aladdin, and American Idiot. In their respective shows, they are all understudies for Hermes. They're Hermeses? Hermeses? Anyway, Eddie, T, and Trent, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We are all Hermesian, I think.
Hermesian.
Hermes. Hermes, yes.
I was starting to say, I got my playbill here, and then right out the top here, oh, what's this? Oh, I saw you, Trent. I saw you crush this role. It was a couple weeks ago now that I saw it. And I want to start, I guess, specifically with this, in that the three of you are distinctly different people. You look distinctly different. You act distinctly different. You're all approaching this role originated by the incomparable Andre de Shields. So I guess, Eddie, let's start with you. When you're going on for Hermes, where do you bring to the character that's different from anybody else?
Well, the flavorish Latino vibe. I think that's the most thing, and that's the most important thing for my character, my Hermes. And having the ability of actually in certain moments add some Spanish words that I actually ask. Ooh. Or Rachel asks Anais, and there's some moments that I can like ad-lib a little bit. So putting that for my Hermes meant a lot since the beginning. And having that approval from the creative team, it's just a blessing. So, yeah.
T, what about you?
It's a good question. I think for me, it's like the reason I really wanted to do this show is I wanted to be able to watch the process of Andre de Shields and also Patrick Page and who they are. So it is being able to bring sort of our full selves into this character without it having to be a carbon copy of Andre, without it having to be a carbon copy of anyone, but just to be able to know the journey that Hermes wants to take us on, to know that, you know, we are narrating this the entire time and making sure the audience has all the information they need, but in the way that we each tell the story, in the way that we each sing, in the way that we each stand on stage and accept the audience and accept the cast. For me, it is the beauty of having a show that doesn't require you to be that carbon copy, which is great.
Mm-hmm. And Trent, of course, I saw you, as I was saying, I've seen Andre both perform completely different approaches to the same character. And just there's the younger kind of sassy that you bring to the role, if I may be so bold, compared to Andre's very wise, very like, I am your boss kind of way that he brings his character to life. So is this a conscious choice, or is this more of who you are on the inside?
I mean, I would say yes to both. You know, there's a reality of you. None of us will ever be the whiz. You know, like Andre is. He is magnificent. He's a wizard. You know. But what I will say is I was incredibly lucky as I was learning the show. The Hermes was the first track that I learned. I'm in the ensemble. I'm a worker. But the first track that I got to learn was Hermes, because there was an awareness that I was going to be going on fairly recently within my run, or fairly early in my run with the show. But in my process, in the 2 weeks that I was learning it, I actually not only got to watch Andre, I also got to watch T. I also got to watch Anthony Chapman, who was one of the bodies that was being replaced as I was coming into the show. So I actually got a kind of wide, three incredibly different individuals who bring their hearts and their souls. You know, Eddie and T both speak to the realities of like what it means to bring your essence, your soul, because the reality is Hermes is telling the story. So it's based within whatever storyteller is inside yourself. And for me, I think there are obvious homages. Like I am embodying my receipt of Andre's energy, because I don't want the show to go off kilter too much. I feel like part of my job as an understudy is to keep it within the same kind of world that he builds. But there's just a reality that you have to acknowledge the soul that you exist as. And Hermes is a particular character, but I will say across the entire show, it's such a beautifully written piece, and it allows you to embody yourself through these characters. Everyone comes on stage at the top of the show as themselves, and we kind of all agree together to tell the story with who is on the stage. Yeah. You know, and it's really special that way.
I was just, with what Trent is saying, I think the one thing for all of the Hermes that go into this, the Hermesians. The only thing that we have to do, at least for our show, and Eddie, it may be different for you because of the tempo in which Levi moves. For us, it's like you don't have to move that fast because Andre doesn't move that fast. So you have plenty of time to make the moments, as opposed to I got to run over here. If you're running in our show, you're in the wrong place because Andre just doesn't move that fast. So we have time to breathe and think and then move to the next thing, which is lovely.
Yeah, in my case, I have that mix of course, Andre, that I saw it twice on Broadway, and then Levi, I have seen it every night. It's very different, you know? So I kind of have like this mix and combination, but always putting my flavor in it, because I like the posture, I like the pace and the wiseness of, you know, the way of Andre brings the character, and then the way that Levi is more, you know, more like down here, more a little bit more connected and more human. So I kind of create a combination of that, and depending of the numbers, as a storyteller, I can switch a little bit and play with that, but always bringing the shoulders and the hips.
The theme that you guys were just talking about, I've heard. I've talked to several other swings and understudies from the Broadway cast so far during this takeover, and that's something that that I've heard repeated is that you're encouraged to bring yourself to the character. Like that's part of whatever character you are, no matter what track you're playing. And so then Eddie, speaking to the tour aspect of the production, when they're standing up a completely new cast compared to swinging or understudies in and out of an existing cast, what was the process for the national tour? Standing that up, do you know if it was any different from how they put the Broadway cast together in terms of saying, here's your mold, go for it? Or was it still just start from scratch? Like now you can bring in some Spanish words, you bring in the Latin feel.
I mean, at least since the beginning, Rachel was very like open for different options and possibilities, and that was kind of nice. And since the beginning, she encouraged me to, yes, be myself, even including the accent. That it was a thing that is that don't worry about the accent, just you're a storyteller. There's a reason why you're here. So feel comfortable with that. So at the beginning, when I entered to a show that is not, of course, it's not on your feet. It's not a Latin show, but it's so diverse and so rich that having that approval from the creative team calms you a little bit and lets you play a little bit more. So at least for the tour and everybody, including Will Mann, that is another understudy. He covers Hades and Hermes. Here on tour, everybody's very different and can bring their own spirit because since the beginning, we got that approval, guiding us, of course, of the base and the show and what we got from Broadway, but acknowledging that it was going to be different too. It's always fun.
I love that. And so T and Trent, you guys both obviously are Hermesian, but T, you also understudy Hades, and Trent, you understudy Orpheus. Those are on opposite ends of the vocal scale.
Yes.
So, I mean, like, hot damn. Aeneas, I asked Aeneas once, I said, why did you write so high? And she goes, I didn't know I wasn't. I just wrote for me.
Right.
Yeah. So she didn't know what she was doing in terms of the female-male differences in the voice. But so she wrote this beautiful, beautiful score that is just in the stratosphere, Trent. And I want to go back when you are on for Orpheus. I've got to see this because I loved you so much I'm sure I want to see all of you for that matter. But so I guess, is Hermes right in the middle in terms of the vocal range? Is that like your standard tenor 2 sort of role, or where is that?
Yeah, I mean, T of course knows this. I was originally cast as a baritone voice part in the worker track in my kind of ensemble track because I was taking over for Anthony, and I think T within 3 days was like, I'm not sure that this guy should be singing in the baritone range.
First of all, let's be very clear. I don't speak up that high. That is a Trent voice.
But there's kind of a Hermes lives very naturally in my instrument, and more so than that, I think I'm able to bring my instrument to Hermes to expand in directions because there's flexibility in what Hermes wants to live in. I certainly sing Hermes higher than Andre even does, because I'm bringing what I have. And there are flavors that I know I can offer with my instrument, with my vessel, that are different, that are unique, that are distinctly me. And I've been lucky enough to get a lot of chances in my career you spoke of American Idiot and you spoke of Evita, and I've gotten these kind of chances to scream at the top of my lungs and figure out kind of what sounds good, but two, where I want to live, like what is the sound and the soul and the voice of Trent as storyteller, and Orpheus is its own entity, and I would say the same kind of rule applies. Like, if you see me, my sound is not Reeve Carney's sound, without a doubt. But again, it's there's a beauty to the nuances of different individuals. There is such value, and that's one of the things I feel like about Hadestown is specifically there is such value in seeing the different takes on on this show, the different bodies and the different ways that this story moves you when there are differences, because the core is so strong, the writing is so strong, that then, you just learn more. You just continue to learn more with different bodies. So I will say, it's certainly a challenge. Orpheus is maybe the hardest thing I've ever done, and Reeve Carney is a beast. I just don't understand how he is as consistent. Like, he's the model of consistency, and it's a thing that it inspires me to strive for.
Wow. Yeah. I again, the first time I ever heard the music, I was just like, that is impossible. This dude is not human. And anyone who can sing that as well, yourself included, also is not human. So it's nice to meet an actual god. You're welcome. So going back to your childhood, Eddie, you've been performing professionally since the age of 14. So talk me through that story. How did you get into that?
Long story short, of course, I started in all the talent shows and middle school, high school, everything. But professionally, I started with this folkloric dance company from Puerto Rico called Gíbaro de Puerto Rico. So we started dancing, but then they were doing original plays, original musicals. So that's when I started dancing. Then, okay, I think you can sing this. So I started singing this. And okay, I have a character for you. So you start doing that. So with that company, I was there for 15 years of my life. But during that time, my first show in Puerto Rico as a Broadway show was Rent. We did Rent in 2009. And that was the first show that it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I want to do this for a living. And even in Puerto Rico, sometimes we rehearse a lot for a few amount of shows, but that was my training. I studied telecommunications and minor in theater, and I was already working in theater. So, and after that, I keep traveling with the company. And the first show that I saw was Mamma Mia in Spain. The first professional Broadway show, and it was in Spain. And Mamma Mia was like, boom, okay, definitely. I have to, there's so many opportunities for this. And that's the show that kind of blew my mind. So since that moment,
you glossed over this.
Yeah.
You glossed over the telecommunications part, but that's what I'm like, oh, yeah. So I'm going to major in telecommunications, minor in theater. Obviously, two very distinct sides of your brain.
Because I was already working in professional theater in Puerto Rico. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Let me just do my telecommunications degrees, because I actually like TV and films and the technical part. My side gig is just editing videos and recording stuff. So I have that under my belt. But then with the folkloric dance company, that was basically my training for singing, acting and everything. So I took advantage of that and seeing world too, and the different opportunities of this business and different cultures too, traveling, representing my island and Spain and Greece and Mexico. So that opened my mind in so many ways that I was like, just focus on this right now, and you can keep doing whatever you want.
That's smart. I mean, it worked out for you too. So congratulations. So,
Thank you very much.
T, you've been doing this for quite a long time as well, right? I mean, 13. This is now your 13th
That's
Broadway
because I'm
credit.
old. It's just because I'm
I was
old.
trying to make a joke about how young you were, T, and I just couldn't. I couldn't think fast enough. I was like, T's been.
Thank you.
He was professional
Damn.
at 14 too. I'll tell you.
It's a child actor. Yes.
He's done one show a year since he was 2. So yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
Yes.
Well, when did you get into performing? What drew you to this world? What drew you to the world?
I honestly, it was when I was growing up at that, because I'm a moment or two older than the rest of you. It's like Turner Classic Movies. Every Saturday there was some. Thank you. There was some MGM movie musical that was on every Saturday. So I was watching all those, and growing up right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, every time a tour came through, we went to see those touring companies. So it's like all of these things kept adding up. And then when I was 9 years old, my guidance counselor, who was on the board at our local little theater, asked me if I would audition for a show they were doing there. And at that point, that was kind of it. It I had the bug, and I performed and was in shows through elementary school and junior high school and high school, and then ended up at North Carolina School of the Arts as a music major for college. It's really just classical voice that entire time. And then right out of school, Vicky Bussard, who was directing the national tour of Once on This Island, asked me if I would audition for it. I did, booked it, graduated on a Saturday, packed up a U-Haul on a Tuesday, was in rehearsal on a Wednesday. And that's kind of how all of it started. And then a couple of, non-equity tours, and then joining equity. And then it took me, I was seeing Guys and Dolls on Broadway, and I remember sitting up in the mezzanine. And this is the one that, of course, Peter Gallagher and Faith Prince and all in this. And I remember seeing it and looking at the stage from the mezzanine and going, "You're ready for this." And like I knew in my head, and it's like from that moment on, it's like there was no questions. Like, you're ready to be on Broadway. And then then I found myself in an elevator the next day with Darren Lee, who was in Guys and Dolls. And I remember just going, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the elevator with Darren Lee," and out of my mind. And but that's how it all started for me. And I mean, I've been fortunate. Like, I've worked with a lot of like really, really spectacular people and learned from them on the journey as well. But yeah, it kind of just kept steamrolling, and as Andre always says, universe is conspiring with you. I feel like the universe kept leading me back to this, because there were plenty of moments of, I don't want to do this anymore, or I need a moment away from it, but it kept pushing back in this direction.
Yep.
I've got so much to add to that. Okay, but I want to hear, Trent, I want to hear your story first.
Well, I come from a family. It's a family affair for me. I actually have 3 siblings who are professionals in New York as well. Growing up, we were musicians. We sang and we played instruments. And my mom was actually a music director, so we would sing in the church choir. And for me, I feel like I was adjacent to it. Wow, goodness! Suddenly, I'm losing my voice. Who knew? Nope, that's not what's happening. Don't you worry. I just need a sip of water, T. Don't you worry.
No, sir. Not at all.
She was just saying.
It was tired.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
Anyway, so but I digress. When I was 12 years old, there was a community theater production of West Side Story, and I always hold this because I was the first one to audition for a musical in my family. I was a little boy. I sang "Where Is Love" from Oliver. I didn't have a monologue, even though you were supposed to bring a monologue in. I got a call back, and I went to my sibling Heath, and I was like, "Heath, you got to audition too." So Heath goes in next day, auditions with his song. They get called back with me, and then before I know it, we're in callbacks, and I, in my tiny, 12-year-old self, they were like, "We cannot put this child on stage to get into street fights in West Side Story." It was me and my friend Adam were the only 2 male bodies that did not get cast. And so my sibling got cast, and then a person dropped out of the show. So they called my eldest brother and asked him to be in the show. That was the mistake, because then it was hooked. I was like, "Oh, okay, so we're gonna cast my siblings." But then from then on, I was really hooked, and honestly, it was really an incredible community theater to get access to. It was called Studio East in Kirkland, Washington, and I got to do like 4 musicals a year. I think my all between the 5 of us, we were 5 kids in 5 years, so we're all very close in age. And between the 5 of us, by the time we'd all graduated high school, we'd all done over 75 musicals. And so we just kind of lived and breathed it for a really long time. My eldest brother's still in Seattle and is a choir teacher, but my sibling Heath is in company on Broadway right now. And my sisters are around and in the biz. My sister Alana made her Broadway debut with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So I'm just kind of lucky I've been surrounded by it. And I've kind of gotten to have my family / my best friends / my coworkers near me all the time to keep as T said, you kind of have to have this, the universe conspiring, and the universe conspired by giving me my family. And I really have felt incredibly blessed. I went to college for it at University of Miami. I booked American Idiot straight out of college. Went on tour with that. While I was on tour, I got cast in the original Broadway company of Aladdin. So I got to move to New York to make my Broadway debut in an original Broadway cast, and did that for 6 years. So 2,000 performances of Aladdin later, and here we are in Hadestown. So it's been a really wild ride, and I've been incredibly blessed and feel incredibly lucky. Also to get to share, my experiences with incredible artists such as T. Oliver Reid right over here. At least he's over here for me on my Zoom. He could be here. He might be there. I don't know. I'm gonna find him.
Hey.
I will give you your $5 when I see you in a bit.
I love how both of you mentioned the universe conspiring with you or for you, because you hear people all the time who are down on their luck, oh, the universe is conspiring against me. Grumpy, grumpy, grumpy. And I believe that I believe that if you're open to embracing the opportunity, if you're open to the chance as it is presented to you, that you can create your path as you want it to, right? So you pick and choose the good things and sort of try to block out the bad things. Was there ever a point that any of the three of you can remember where you were like, I got to make a choice right now. And if I go one way, this will happen. If I go another way, it probably won't.
I honestly, I think that's a daily thing. I mean,
that happens a lot.
Yeah, some days are easier than others. There's some days it's I'm just gonna keep putting one foot in front of the other and knowing that this is a part of the journey. Some days are, I had 4 years when I was doing Mary Poppins that I was also working as a talent agent because I just didn't think I wanted to do it anymore.
Really?
So I was working in the office from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then going and doing Mary Poppins at night. And on 2 show days, I'd be in the office from 9 until 12 or 12:30, go do the matinee, go back for an hour after the matinee, then go back to do the evening show. And I realized it wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was just that I needed to know for myself. Oh, yes, I did. For 4 years. Oh, my God. But it's that thing, you just need to figure out exactly where it is you want to be and what it is you want to do. And if you can, and if you love this thing so much that you don't want to do any of the other parts. And it was figuring that out. But once you figure that out, it's like that aha of like, okay, now I can refocus myself. Now I can go through all of this that I'm going to have to go through because it's work. And it is show business, and it is dealing with lots of personalities, and it's dealing with the voices that sometimes want to tap you and say, no, you're not the right one, when the universe is telling you that you are. And for me, it's like listening to the universe and saying, I'm going to continue down this road because I know this is where I'm supposed to be. And I'm ready for any of the obstacles. I'm listening. Paul, the stage manager, is sending me texts at the same time and saying it's getting worse.
Oh my God.
I'm... Hold 1 second. I'm going to...
Okay. Another day.
Okay, no, we're fine for a second. Trent, just keep warming up.
Oh yeah, here we are. Welcome.
This is theater. This is theater, kids.
This is the daily stress that we have as the swings and understudies. Yeah.
It is the daily stress. And for us, we thought that we were done because the majority of the cast went through this, got it in December. And it's just that thing. It's like, of course, as soon as the mask mandate is lifted, we're going back into this again.
Oh, God.
So we'll see.
Also, to be fair, we've replaced so many people since December. It's been a pretty consistent turnover for the past ever. And so it's new bodies. And the reality is this is a thing that we're going to have to live with for the rest of time. So... Mm-hmm. I'm just glad that we have incredible, flexible, generous individuals who have joined our company who who are fully just having to make it work, and of course we're here. These been doing it long enough that we roll.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. I want to touch on this. So obviously, as we're recording this episode, it's early evening, and the evening show hasn't been announced yet. It's as we were starting to talk before we were recording. There's been possible COVID tests that have come back positive in the cast. So like now, Trent, you're saying you might be going on. We don't know. It's so after this episode airs, we will have known if you have gone on or not. But now in the moment.
Yes.
Like for the three of you as swings and understudies, again, side note, shout out to swings, understudies, standbys, and alternates. They keep this industry going. Full stop.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Hey,
Yep.
So now as you're sitting here waiting for the news, wondering if you need to go practice your guitar for tonight's show, is this just another day, or you get little butterflies anywhere still? Or like, I feel like no matter how comfortable I ever got with any role, I still had that nervous pee that I had to do 3 times before going on stage.
I know.
I will specifically say that Orpheus makes me want to pee. That's a very specific role that is more nuanced than maybe any role I've done before. Hermes feels like, I don't know.
No, Hermes, and this show's been running for more than 2 years now, and it's still not comfortable. It's finally in these past couple of weeks gotten to a place where it's like, oh yeah, it feels much easier now, because he says the same sentence 800 times in slightly different ways. So it's always remember that, and he's on stage the entire time. So there's still moments that I'm like, okay, this is the next line, this is the next line, this is the next line. After 2.5 years, just because you want to make sure that you are doing your part in telling the story. But it definitely finally is feeling like, oh, I can really now sit back a little more without missing anything, without losing anything, and having the moments that Hermes and Hades have, and the looks that Hermes and Persephone have, and not missing them, and really be as present as possible, and not have myself stressed out and feeling like, oh crap, I needed to pee right before I walked on stage, and now you're on stage for the next hour and a half needing to pee.
Yep. Because Hermes is all the time there.
Yeah.
2 hours and a half on stage.
Yeah. Yes.
Eddie, has COVID been? Oh, go ahead, Eddie. Go ahead.
No, I was going to tell, because last week on Thursday, I went on as Hermes, and I got the call in the morning. We had 2 shows that day here. And in the morning at like 10 a.m., Paige, our stage manager, is like, you're on. And I was like, okay, well, worker who? And it's like, no, Hermes. And I'm like, what? So I haven't been on since December for Hermes.
Whoa.
So it was like, okay, let's just, and I'll automatically, in my case, yes, you get in like prep mode. So I do my breakfast in the morning, work out, warm up. I always have like this checklist of reviews of each track, that in my moments that I know that I need to like figure it out very well and be self-conscious about it. But it always happened when you go on stage, it's like, oh, okay, I'm Hermes. So, and there were 2 moments specifically that happened that you're thinking like, what's next? Like Trent says, but because the memory muscle memory is there, it's literally like you feel like you're like vomiting the words because you listen to it 8 times a week. So you know it's there, but sometimes if you're not extremely focused or in it, it's like, and then comes out. So it happens, but it's always fun. Yeah.
I love the science behind how the brain works too, in that memory and recollection are 2 different, recall and recollection are 2 different centers of your brain, right? So if you have to speak it, it's a different part of so you can learn to speak something versus learn to recognize something. So I love that, those 2 connections have to come together, and the vomiting of the words is like at the last possible moment it comes out, and you're like, oh, my body just did that. Okay, cool. It's buried in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes as workers, because we have to cover the workers too. Sometimes we're like, when you go on stage, it's like, okay, worker 5, worker 5, worker 5, because it's so easy to go to the worker 4. And I'm like, oh, I'm not in the right position. Okay. So it's always fun.
Eddie, when I tell you like that, and so Trent knows like, and I keep, for some reason, I have kept people's original cast members' names in my head. So every once in a while I'm like, oh yeah, so you can wear Ofra when Ofra hasn't been in this show for about 12 years. So nobody knows who she actually is. It's like, so for me to remember, it's like, no, just worker 3. No, yes. worker 4. Yeah.
That, there's a funny anecdote on that. When I went, I was in Evita in the UK, and the costume, the people who built the costumes for Evita had built the costumes for Aladdin. And so all of them knew who I was because they were like, "You're purple!" They didn't know my name. They didn't like, but they all knew who I was because my face is the face that goes around with all of the productions of Aladdin because I'm the original purple marketplace costume. And it's just so funny how that is pervasive in that way. What I do want to say though about Hermes specifically is that there is something. And maybe this is just a personal thing because I don't know. I love the power of Hermes. I love like it's intoxicating getting to walk on stage at the beginning of the show and look directly into the audience's eyes and watch them start losing their shit a little bit, because they just kind of squirm, and it kind of puts you in this reverse position, right? Which I think for me, it allows for me to keep my cool a little bit more because I feel like most of the time the dynamic is one of very clearly you're being watched when you're on stage, when you're performing a role. But when you're being Hermes, whatever happens is intentional because you are the one telling the story.
That actually the situation of COVID that hit us on January, actually, we had to cancel 2 weeks. We ended up, we went to New Orleans. That was New Year's. We had fun. It was a great week. But then after that, 2 cases, 3 cases, 4 cases. And then suddenly there was no Hermes. And I was the only Hermes that was going to be performing for 2 weeks. But then suddenly we lost our covers for Eurydice. And I was like, there's no show. So they decided to cancel. So Houston, we didn't perform in Houston and Austin. So we started again in Dallas for 2 weeks. But it was rough.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, with the tour, like in New York, it's all sort of here. It's one cast, one cast more or less, and one location. So I don't know if that's easier to control or harder to control in terms of keeping your cast sort of clean and away from the nasty germs. But
right,
like on the tour for you, is it sort of a different scenario where you guys have even more strict kind of rules or different sort of thing?
Depending on the stage, they have different laws and different rules. But at least for the theater rules, it's the same in every city, no matter what. We have to wear our mask backstage. We have to get tested every day, depending of the level of COVID. Like right now, we're only testing 3 times a week. And 4 times a week, and 2 of those are like PCR tests. Mm-hmm. And we always have to send a picture to the COVID person, like Nate, that is the manager of COVID here, and to make sure. But because we have that breakout in January, basically everybody from the cast already had it, kind of. There's a few survivors, to put it that way, but hopefully we don't have another breakout for a long time, and we don't need to cancel any other cities.
T, what's the latest?
We're trying to figure it out. There's a lot going on around here. Someone who's out sick, and then a couple people who may be out sick. Yeah. Yes, well, like this. Have you ever done a show on the road that only had 1 worker?
We were very close. We were very close in January to start doing a show with only 3 workers. It was going to be interesting, but no.
Yeah. Oh boy.
We shall see.
We shall see. All right. Well, I know you're busy. I'll respect all your time. I want to wrap up here with 3 questions that I ask everyone to end the episodes. And so I'll ask all three of you, each get to answer. So we'll start with Eddie. You first. What motivates you?
What motivates me? My country, Puerto Rico, and the talent that is in the island. And if there's any way that I can inspire all that talent from the island and keep helping them to pursue their dreams, like that keeps me going on as a Latino person. Yeah.
Love that. Trent, what about you?
The concept of a story and the power of a story in the world at large is a profoundly, it kind of has an endless reach in my mind. You know, even when I was listening to this podcast daily where they're talking about Volodymyr Zelensky and how he was a performer who was performing the part of a president before he became the president of Ukraine. And part of him being such an incredible president is his capacity to communicate, is his capacity to tell a story. And for me, kind of what's inspirational, what's motivational about what it is that we do, and what's the beautiful intersection about getting to do it through the story that we all three of us on this call get to tell every night, is that there's this beautiful ability to incept into people's brains. You can place ideas that would never, in the most subtle way, and you can create connections in fairly singular ways, you know, that you can't really get in any other form of communication. And so, yeah, long-winded, but stories.
Cool. T, what about you?
Yeah, a bit of what Trent has said. I think it is for me the what we do and how it can change people's lives. If even for the 2.5 hours that they're in the theater, it's, I mean, the beauty of this show, and it's something that we all know because Hermes says it. We're going to sing it again, and it's this idea for me. It's like until we learn the lessons we need to learn, we will continue to tell this story. We will continue to go through what we're going through. We will continue to have conversations about global warming until we fix it. We will continue to have conversations about war until we understand that they actually don't do us any good at all. We'll continue to do these until, as human beings, we learn this story. Hermes goes over and over in this show. He says the same thing over and over and over again. He tells us Orpheus is going to turn back. Not in those words, but he says many, many times, watch what's going on. This is going to happen next. And this is going to happen next. And it's not until we actually see this turn of Orpheus looking back that you hear the audience, because it's almost like they've forgotten. And then it's like, oh, crap. Mm-hmm. He told us in the first song this was going to happen, and but is that moment that we're able to help the audience sort of pull away from everything and just really invest themselves in this journey that Orpheus and Eurydice are taking for that amount of time. And that's, I mean, I worked with his name's Sean McCord. He was on Mary Poppins as well, and he always said that we were magic makers. And it's the thing that's one of those things that has stuck with me. We are magic makers, and that we can spin these webs, and that we can make people suspend themselves for 2.5 hours, no matter what's going on in their lives. That's the inspiration, I think, for me.
So then, Trent, next question for you: what advice would you give to your younger self?
Do you just like toss that out like I'm supposed to just good God. Hold on. No, I mean, actually kind of. Breathe. Breathe and keep moving through it, because you're gonna learn. It's unstoppable. You will continue to learn no matter what happens, and most of the time you will survive. So breathe and keep moving.
I like it. Okay.
I did like a full long answer last time. This time I'm like, you get 3 words.
That's great. All right. T, what's your advice for yourself?
My advice for myself is an easy one. Stay out of luxury brand stores and spend all your money when you're young. Did a lot of that. Listen, it's a thing. It's like, again, it's like, you're on Broadway and you think, oh, I'm just going to do all this stuff, spending this, going out drinking every night. Everything's like, no. That show will close, because all shows at some point, to make sure that you are ready for the lean times, which I think, we all found ourselves in that, over the past couple of years, but to be ready for all that theater brings, which, amazing highs, but also some can be treacherous lows. And if you are ready for those, then you can make it through, and you can find your way back to where we are right now. So stay out of Prada, stay out of those stores.
Let's be real, though. You turn a fierce look, T.
Well, tis true.
Eddie, what's your advice for yourself?
Trust yourself more. Trust the journey that you have, that you're going to go through. Learn from everyone. Even if it's a bad lesson, you're going to learn from that and take advantage of it for your life. And keep moving on, no matter what people say.
I love it. All right. Last question, hardest one. And T, I'll start with you because it's your turn now. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, you can see it as many times as you want. What would you see?
I'm not going to lie to you. It actually is going to be this one, Alan. Much like you. When I first heard that recording from New York Theater Workshop, I listened to nothing else for about 3 months. And it was listening that I was like, oh yeah, you're going to do this show. There's not a choice for anybody. You're doing this show. This would without a doubt be the show that I would be okay listening to and seeing over and over.
Beautiful. Eddie?
I have to make an echo of those words, because honestly, when I saw the show, I went by myself and I was crying, basically, especially the second act. And that moment, that it always gets me when Hades, shows the flower. Even when I'm on stage, sometimes I have to control myself. But when I saw that show, I always said that it would be fun to be part of it. And look how we are right now. So definitely Hadestown is there.
All right, Trent, what would you say?
Wow. Well, now all these Hadestown answers have come out, and I was feeling very nostalgic, feeling like I want to say Hadestown, and now it's been plucked from my mouth. I'm gonna say this is we're gonna go there. I have a deep, profound love for the soundtrack of Les Mis. There we go. I said it. It's out. It's out there.
Yeah.
I've heard it, and I think it's partially because I've participated in it from a number of roles. I've been on the stage, but for me, and most kind of important to my heart, I've been in the pit, and I played the show. So I like, if we're talking about like getting immersed in the score, that's a score that I have been immersed in and have deeply appreciated. But Hadestown. T said it. I did the same thing when I saw Hadestown. I listened to it again and again and again for months. It was the only thing I listened to. It's really wild how it has that capacity to get in there.
I love that. Yeah, it's beautiful, and I agree with all of it. And wonderful advice too. So T, where can we find you online?
You can find me online at T. Oliver Reid on Instagram. Same thing on Twitter, and you can see me on if you like a morning wake up show on Tuesdays, Thursdays at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 11. I do a wake up with everyone. I wish everyone their birthdays on the day. We have a little scripture to get people out in the world on their right foot. And,
Nice.
As we talk about, pop culture and politics and anything else, because I found while we were especially in the pandemic, like people needed something to connect themselves. And it's a lot of just having, 15 minutes or a half hour for people to actually connect before they have to like get out into the real world.
Trent?
I am on Instagram at Trensaun, TRENSAUN, and you can look up. You can actually see what my whole family. We're under the website, the Saunders Collective. That's my last name. The Saunders, SAUNDERS. We do lots of things, and yeah, I'm often not that active on social medias. But I'm so grateful for the support always, and I appreciate people looking out.
All right, Eddie.
Maybe look out for an announcement later.
Yep, that's
Hey,
right.
check that story.
Eddie, where can we find you?
In my case, for Instagram and Twitter, it will be at Eddie Noel R. Eddie Noel R, and Facebook too. It's the same thing for everybody. All the platforms.
And of course, get tickets to Hadestown on Broadway and the national tour everywhere you can see it multiple times. You can get more of me at theaterpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and even TikTok. I haven't posted anything there yet at theater_podcast. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening. This has been edited by Well-Rounded Hoodlum Productions. Thank you to Jukebox the Ghost for intro and outro music, and T, Trent, and Eddie, the Hermesians. Thank you for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Alex.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.